In this video, we're going to be looking at how the marketing macro environment impacts upon businesses, but in particular, of course, how that macro environment impacts upon the business's marketing activities. So if you remember, the macro environment is the wider, the bigger environment, all those things that are happening and changing in the world that might affect the business. And we're going to start by looking at the demographic environment in a little bit more detail. So what does that word demographic mean? Well, demography is the study of human populations. So we might be talking about the size of the population, the density. We might be talking about where people live within that population, the age distribution, gender, race, occupation, all sorts of things. But when we're thinking about demography, marketers will analyze changes in the population. So in most of our countries, we have an aging population. The age structure of our population is changing. And that means that marketers need to make sure that they are satisfying the needs and wants of that older population. We've got changes in family structures. Across the world, families are becoming smaller. Again, in most of the countries that we live in, there are geographic population shifts. There's a move of the population away from rural areas into the cities. City dwellers want to buy different things, need to buy different things than rural people. And again, marketers need to be aware of those changing needs and wants. In many countries, populations are becoming more highly educated and the populations are becoming more diverse in terms of their ethnicity. So marketers have to be aware of all those changes, and they have to be aware of the changes to consumers' needs and wants that these shifts in the demographic environment bring about. Let's look at one example of a change in the demographic environment. This research here looked at the changes to childbirth that have happened in the UK over the past 30, 40 years or so. And you'll see along the top of this table, they talk about Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z. So these are labels that marketers give to age groups within the population. So I'm actually just before Generation X. You guys are nearly all in Generation Z, I think, because you're born between 2001, 2014. There's a chance that one or two of you may be in Generation Y. What do these labels mean? Well, they're just a way of marketers being able to group people together because people of different generations tend to have slightly different needs and wants. And that's because they've grown up in a different society with different cultural norms, and they want to purchase different things. So this data talks about the average age of a first-time mother. Well, the average age of a first-time Generation X mother was 26.4. If we fast forward to your generation, Generation Z, you guys are more likely to become first-time parents in your 30s when you're nearly 30. 29.8 was the average at the time of this research. No doubt it's gone up a little bit since then. Why is that important? Well, there are whole sectors of the market that cater to parents and to small children. And if the age of those parents is changing, then so too probably is the disposable income that those parents have. And therefore, those parents might want to buy different products, perhaps higher priced products for their children. Businesses have to be aware of this change and have to ensure that they continue to meet the needs and wants of these parents as they change. There are also huge changes in terms of the proportion of births outside marriage. Generation X parents, only 9% of children were born outside of marriage. Again, when we get to your generation, almost half of births now happen outside marriage. This might mean that there are more single parents, and again, that changes the needs and wants of those parents. Perhaps there's more demand for nursery places, for example. And the other statistic we see here is that there are far more babies born to mothers over the age of 40 amongst Generation Z parents than there were amongst Generation X. And again, do those older mothers, those older parents, do they have different needs and wants? And if our business is in the business of serving that part of the market, do we need to change what we're offering? So, and this is just one aspect of the demographic environment. Businesses need to be aware of all of those different aspects. Let's move on now and have a little look at the economic environment. So this is where we consider the economic factors that affect consumer spending power and spending patterns. And these will be different according to the type of economy that we're looking at. So the UK is a developing economy. Most of you guys come from developing economies. But of course, there are consumers even in subsistence economies where people are generally just surviving. Economic factors also look at changes in consumer spending and differences in the distribution of income, because different businesses will be targeting different income groups. And not only do they need to be aware of those different income groups, they need to understand whether those income groups are getting bigger or smaller, and how changing patterns are how spending patterns are changing. So again, let's have a look at an example of this. So you may know about the financial crisis that happened across the world in 2008. What this graph shows us is what has happened to average wages in many countries, but we're going to particularly look at the UK. So what has happened to average wages in the UK since that financial crisis? Well, we see the UK as this dark blue line right at the bottom of the graph. And we see that at the time of the financial crisis, just before the financial crisis, we have all the countries merged together in order to give us a common starting point. That doesn't mean that wages were the same in all those countries. We've just got a common starting point. So what the lines then show us is what has happened to wages in those different countries since that time. So, for example, we can see on this pink line, wages in Canada have increased from the baseline of 100 up to 110. So they've basically increased by 10% in the years between 2008 and 2017. On the other hand, if we look at the UK, this blue line right at the very bottom, we see that actually, since the financial crisis, wages in the UK have actually fallen. Now that's really important for marketers in the UK to understand. If wages in the UK have fallen, what is going to happen to spending, and what is going to happen to the kinds of goods that people in the UK want to buy? So let's have a look at one effect of this. This is the market share of different grocery stores or supermarkets in Great Britain, in the UK. And this takes us from 2012 to 2018. Now, what we see is that in 2012, that's the top line here, in 2012, the biggest market share was held by Tesco. Tesco had nearly 31% of the supermarket market, if you like. 31% of all money spent in supermarkets was spent in Tesco. Now, Tesco is a middle-range supermarket in terms of their prices. They're not the most expensive, but they're not the cheapest. We see then Sainsbury's, a little bit more expensive, has got the next largest market share, almost largest market share, but Asda is a lower price supermarket, also with a big market share. And then we go down here, and I want to point out in particular some supermarkets that are new to the UK and which have goods that are particularly good value for money or cheap. So this blue here, this is Aldi. Aldi in 2012 had 3% market share of UK supermarkets. And this light blue is a supermarket called Lidl, and in 2012 they had a market share of 2.8%. But look what happens as we go down through the years and we reach at the bottom here 2018. We can see that in those 6 years, Tesco's has lost market share. It's lost about 3.5% of its market share. So where have those customers gone? Well, they haven't gone to Sainsbury's because Sainsbury's has also lost a bit of market share. And they haven't gone to Asda because Asda has also lost a bit of market share. The companies where they've mostly gone to are Aldi and Lidl. So what's happened here is that as people's incomes have fallen, people in the UK have shifted their spending to cheaper supermarkets that market themselves as being low price and good value for money. So Aldi and Lidl have taken advantage of this change in the economic structure of the UK, and they've grown their market share as a result. More recently, supermarkets like Tesco and Sainsbury's have responded by bringing out value ranges, but they've been a little bit behind the curve and they've lost market share as a result. So the economic environment is really, really important. Okay, we're going to stop at this point, and in our next video, we'll be looking at the remaining aspects of the macro environment. But for now, there are a few questions for you to